growth or on plant growth of the processes of respiration, photosynthesis, net assimilation rate, water, and nutrient uptake. So these four things are all related to each other. So that's why we're going to look at them together in the same dot point. First of all, I started with photosynthesis. I've done them slightly out of order, but I think photosynthesis is known by most people quite easily. So we'll start off with that, and then we'll move to the rest. So the first one, photosynthesis. Hopefully you have an idea of what photosynthesis is, but it's the fundamental process on which all living organisms depend for their food supply. And not all living organisms photosynthesize, obviously only plants do, but plants form the basis of energy for animals. So ultimately, all energy that we eat, etc., comes from the sun, because plants, at some point, either we eat plants or the things we are eating have eaten plants. So that is where we all depend on the energy from the sun, and ultimately photosynthesis. So in photosynthesis, light energy is trapped by the chlorophyll in the chloroplasts in the leaves, in the green part of the leaves. It's converted into chemical energy and used to combine carbon dioxide and water to form simple sugars. So hopefully you know the photosynthetic equation. In agriculture, if you remember the chemical symbols, that's great, but the word equation is fine as well. So first of all, we have carbon dioxide and water, and these are the inputs into photosynthesis. Then we have some sunlight and chlorophyll, obviously required, and the outputs are glucose and oxygen. So you should know already that oxygen is produced as a byproduct of this reaction, and then that puts oxygen back into the atmosphere, which we can potentially breathe, and we do. So the effect of photosynthesis on the growth of plant, obviously, it's creating all of the glucose or energy that the plant needs. So photosynthesis is the chemical reaction between carbon dioxide and water with light present, and chlorophyll that forms glucose. The rate of glucose production will determine how much energy the plant will have for growth, repair, and yield. Obviously, when there's less sun in a location, or it's winter and there's less sun during the day, plants will not grow as fast. And that's an easy example is lawn or grass at home. During the summer months, you have to mow it much more often because there's much more sunlight and warmth as well for the plants to grow and photosynthesize. So the more leaves you have, and the greater the photosynthetic area, the more photosynthesis you're going to have, and therefore obviously more plant growth. One thing you may not know is that light and dark reaction is part of photosynthesis. So there's a part of photosynthesis that occurs during the day, and there's another part of the photosynthetic process that occurs during the night. The one that requires all the energy to do is where water is split apart into hydrogen and oxygen, and this splitting apart of a molecule requires the energy from the sun to do that. But then during the nighttime, there's a combination of the hydrogen and carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and that is turned into glucose, which is, as you'll see up here, C6H12O6, and glucose can be made from those components, and that can occur without any energy from the sun during nighttime. And oxygen really is a byproduct, but it's basically the burning of the energy. So photosynthesis is the creation of the energy, and respiration is the burning of the energy in the body of the animal, the human, or the plant, for it to actually use that energy to live and to grow and to survive. So respiration is the continuous breakdown of glucose, and it releases carbon dioxide, water, and energy. And you'll notice by looking at this equation, it's the exact opposite of photosynthesis. So it's the reversal of photosynthesis, and that energy that was coming from the sun is instead used as energy for the organism. And so the equation is glucose plus oxygen gives you carbon dioxide output plus energy for use. And this energy is used for maintenance, repair, growth. So without respiration, you'd have the energy, you'd have the glucose, but you wouldn't be able to break it down to do anything with it. So respiration breaks the glucose down to do something with it. And it determines the amount of energy that can be allocated to these things. High energy production with low demand for repair to the plant will create an energy excess. Now we'll talk about this a little bit later, but a plant needs to have repair done when insects, for example, might be eating leaves, and the plant needs to repair itself. And to do that, it needs more energy. And so it's going to use energy that now can't be stored for yield, but it needs to be used to repair the plant. So that's why farmers would like to prevent insects eating plants, for example. It reduces the photosynthetic area, but it also means the plant has to spend more energy repairing itself instead of putting that energy into yield. So things that affect respiration are, if you have less glucose, obviously you have less respiration because it requires that energy. It's the same as in humans. We respire as well from the energy in the food that we've eaten. And if we have less food, we will have less energy ultimately, and it will be weaker and won't be able to do as much stuff, and our respiration will decrease also. In terms of temperature, all chemical reactions require a certain temperature. So if the temperature gets closer to the optimum temperature for a plant, and every plant has its own optimum temperature, it will help improve the rate of reaction. So let's say that a plant has, a 22 degrees Celsius optimum temperature for growth and for respiration. This will be its maximum here, and then if it's less, there'll be less respiration, or if it's more than that, there'll be less as well. So in that case, that plant would be 22 degrees, would be the optimum temperature, but there's plenty of plants that grow in hotter climates or colder climates where their optimum temperature is above or below that, but that is unique to each plant. And lastly, for respiration to occur, you need to have oxygen as an input, and if you don't have enough oxygen, maybe in a glass house that's closed up or something like that, then that will slow down the respiration rate. Moving on to the third concept, net assimilation rate. Now this is kind of a combination of the previous two. So this is actually the equation for net assimilation rate is the amount of photosynthesis minus the rate of respiration. Now if your net assimilation rate is positive, that's good. If it's negative, that's bad. So something we can relate this to is, for example, in humans, if we eat more energy than we burn over here, then we will put on weight, and that is the net assimilation rate. In that case, would be positive. However, if we eat less energy each day than we actually burn, then we will have a negative net assimilation rate and we will lose weight. And so obviously with plants, we're wanting to have them put on weight and put on yield and store energy. So each day we need to ensure that they are photosynthesizing more than they are burning over here. So what it is, it's a measure of growth of plants resulting from the difference between the amount of photosynthesis and the amount of respiration. And so it gives you an important knowledge about how much your plant's going to put on in weight. And what we call, or the way we measure weight in plants is called dry matter. Obviously, a large portion of plants is water, and the way we measure it is by drying the plants out and weighing them, the dry material, because water isn't really worth anything. And obviously this is worked out over a period of time as an average for the plant. And so plant growth can be distinguished from plant development. Similar to animals, growth is an increase in size, whereas development is the sequence of changes over its life. And for a plant to grow, the rate of production of material by photosynthesis must exceed the rate at which it's being used by respiration, which is what I said here. So you want to have a positive NAR, or net assimilation rate. The material not used in respiration is used to produce new cells and hence grow. Now this graph here is kind of an illustration of NAR, and here we have photosynthesis, which is producing the energy in red, and in the dotted blue line we have respiration, which is the burning of the energy. And obviously the plant is going to need to burn energy to stay alive all day long, even when there's no photosynthesis. But during the day, as the sun comes up and it gets brighter and brighter, there's going to be more and more photosynthesis until a peak time, maybe sometime around midday or a bit later, and then it's going to drop off as the sun goes. Now this bit here above the blue but below the red is important because this is excess or stored energy, and this is very similar to the example of, say, solar panels on a house and having a battery connected to your solar panels. Your house will use energy all day long, maybe more during the day, but all day long you'll use energy. However, your solar panels are only going to produce energy when there is sun up. So for you to actually have energy all day long, you need to produce more energy from the sun during this period here when the light's up than you use all day. And that is basically the net assimilation rate. You want to make sure your photosynthesis is maximized and your respiration is kind of as low as it can possibly be, because this difference here is stored and used later, or stored as yield for the plant to grow with. And an example here is if you have in the UK winter, they have very few hours of sunlight. And if you have less light, you have less photosynthesis, you have less glucose produced, and therefore your NAR or net assimilation rate is lower because your respiration rate will still be up here and your photosynthesis rate might be kind of going up here, which means you can't store enough energy. So what we'll have a look at here is things that actually affect the NAR. Now, obviously the rate of photosynthesis, if we can increase photosynthesis and increase glucose, then we'll have an increased net assimilation rate. If our respiration increases for maintenance and repair because maybe there's insects or wind damage or something like that, then that will decrease that NAR. The availability of inorganic nutrients, so if we don't have enough nutrients, the reactions will not occur as easily or as much, and that will be a decrease in the NAR. If you have more non-photosynthetic tissue in the plant, so let's say the plant has a higher amount of non-leaf area, such as roots and stems, those cells aren't producing any energy, but they are burning energy. So if you have more cells that are burning energy and not producing anything, then your NAR is going to decrease because you have your NAR line, or so your respiration line has increased, but you don't have as many cells actually producing energy, so the photosynthesis might even decrease. And that means your NAR will decrease. Photoperiod, so if the length of the day decreases or increases in summer, for example, then you'll get increased photosynthesis, increased glucose, and increased NAR. And stage of development of the plant, as the plant progresses, it gets more leaves equals more NAR, more fruit equals lower NAR because there's less photosynthesis. So ultimately, the effect of net assimilation rate on the plant is that the plant will grow and hence have a yield if you have a positive NAR. The higher that NAR, the more yield is being stored for sale. And obviously, if at a negative NAR, you are losing weight or yield in the plant. The last one here is, for all this to occur, plants need to take up water and nutrients. And here, because we're talking about it taking up nutrients from the roots, through the roots in the soil and to the leaves where the photosynthesis is occurring, the inputs of water and nutrients in photosynthesis are taken up through the xylem. We don't need to worry about the phloem in this section, just the xylem. So with the xylem, it has water and dissolved nutrients and minerals which travel in an upwards direction only. And they go from the roots to the leaves of the plant. And the xylem is composed of two different types of vessels. You've got the vessel elements and you've got the tracheids. And so this is going from the roots up to the leaf. And the important thing here is the transpiration stream theory. So we have adhesion and cohesion, which are two forces in terms of water particles which help this occur. So your water is being sucked basically up from the roots. The water is moving into the roots as the water gets sucked up the plant. The water travels across from the soil into the roots. And if we look here at number one, so you've got the stomata here on the leaves, and the sun is evaporating the water out of the leaf, and also the water is being used in photosynthesis. So we have transpiration stream theory, and it's the physical force of water being pulled up the plant stem by evaporation. So evaporation is occurring, which is pulling the water up the stem. Number two, the water and dissolved nutrients and minerals in the soil move into the roots by osmosis. The root hairs on the roots increase the surface area to increase more water and minerals going in. Number four, the water moves up the xylem vessels. Number five, the water is lost through stomata, which creates tension lower down in the plant. There's more water down here and less up here, so there's tension between those two areas. Number six, the adhesion. So the water molecules actually stick together, and that's cohesion, but adhesion is also sticking to the wall. So even when this process is not actually moving water, the water will actually stick to the wall. So you can imagine if you had a really, really super thin straw, water will actually stick in that straw because the water molecules will stick to the side of the straw, or in this case, the xylem. So that's adhesion. And then lastly, cohesion is the water particles actually stick together. So I'm sure you can imagine if you put a drop of water on a bench and you kind of stick a knife or a fork or something in it and move it around, you can actually move the water droplet around because the water shows cohesion. So there's an actual attraction between the water molecules. So this is called transpiration stream theory, and this is the way that water and nutrients move up the plant and allow photosynthesis and respiration to occur in the plant. So if we have a look here, the flow of the water through the xylem from the roots and the leaf is against gravity, and it's called transpiration stream. The water rises through the xylem vessel thanks to cohesion and adhesion. And so remember, cohesion is the force of attraction between two particles of the same, such as two water molecules, and adhesion is two particles attracted together that are different, e.g. water and the xylem wall in this case. And so if we don't have enough water and nutrients going up to the leaves, then that would be a limiting factor and would prevent photosynthesis from occurring. So how does water and nutrient uptake affect plant growth? Water and nutrients are required as inputs for photosynthesis to occur, and then having a well-developed root system and stems, such as xylem, which contains xylem, allows sufficient water and nutrients to allow optimum levels of photosynthesis, growth, and NAR. If a plant maybe has less xylem than a different type of plant, it will struggle to get as much nutrients up to the leaves, and therefore will not grow as well if its xylem aren't as well developed. So looking at past HSC questions, we have the first one from 2014. Which environmental factor would be most likely to cause seedlings growing in a greenhouse to appear pale and elongated? This is closely related to this dot point, maybe including another one later on, but when they are growing and they can't get access to light, seedlings will grow elongated, so they will grow longer, trying to seek out light, and they will be pale because the chlorophyll and chloroplasts haven't developed enough because there hasn't been light for them to develop. So in this case, the correct answer is low light conditions. 2012 question here. How can the modification of one plant characteristic improve crop production? Now, this question could also be related to another dot point later, but you could answer this dot point from this dot point. So increasing leaf area through early addition of fertilizer can help increase photosynthesis. This leads to a higher net assimilation rate and ultimately more plant dry matter production. That would be a good answer for that. Which of the following is a direct product of photosynthesis? The answer is glucose. What does net assimilation rate measure? And the answer is the dry matter production, because this is the difference between photosynthesis and respiration. So it includes both of these things, and it doesn't include this. So NAR is the dry matter production of a plant. Looking at the 2016 question here, net assimilation rate, again asked about, is an important measure of plant growth. It is determined by calculating the balance between photosynthesis and respiration. So it's photosynthesis minus respiration. This here is an example of a past question, a written answer one, not a multiple choice one. 2016, explain how farmers can manage plant production systems to maximize photosynthesis. Now this is also related to a dot point coming up shortly, but you could also potentially start answering it already. And this is a sample